Well, hello everybody. You see my dad's dog Urkel. I am babysitting for the week, so he is going to keep me company during this video. This is going to be a fun one. I just got back from the Toronto leg of the Dream Theater 40th anniversary tour, and I've got some thoughts, got some ideas, and I wanted to jump in and kind of do that here rather than jumping out into the main area. I'm sure he's found something very interesting. And I wanted this to kind of be like a train of thought, kind of an idea, no edits, just kind of like this was my intentions. This was my kind of top of the mind thing as I'm thinking about the album. Some goods, some bads, and I want to get through some bads first before I talk about what I loved. Some of the bads. The first off, I did in fact get a t-shirt. That t-shirt did cost me 65 Canadian dollars. I think that now currently holds the record of the most expensive t-shirt that I have bought. Now that's not the most expensive item that I have bought from an album or from a tour, from a band. I believe I bought a Taylor Swift sweatshirt for $100, which is still ridiculous and way too expensive, but not quite as ridiculous or as expensive as the $65 t-shirt. Honestly, I think I'll start buying from the people outside, the bootleggers, that are selling the knockoff t-shirts outside. Might be doing that from now on. Now I know, it goes to the roadies, it goes to the crew, it goes to the venue, and all that. But man, $65 is way too much, way too much. And yet I still bought it. So who's the real fool? Um, yeah, the other big drawback to the concert, the really big negative, the big elephant in the room, it was James LeBray's singing voice. It was rough. It was rough, y'all. I know that he has struggled in the past, and I have a number of their live albums within the recent years. And I think this is the worst that I've ever really heard it, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like I was on their last tour, not me personally. I mean, I went like I saw their last tour with their I believe it was their Distance Over Time. I didn't go and see their Views from the Top of the World. But I did see the tour that they did with Distance Over Time, where they did the second half of the show was all scenes from a memory. And I thought he did a great job. I thought James LeBray did a great job at that one. That was the most recent one that I saw from him. But man, there was just something about this time where he was flubbing quite a bit as well. Like he would forget lyrics, and when he was performing a certain song, I'm not going to get into spoilers yet of the set list. But when he was getting into certain songs, he literally stopped and was like, "Oh, I forgot the lyrics." And I'm like, this is your 40th anniversary, and you've been there since like the very early 90s. How do you forget the lyrics to us? I get it, pressure and all that. I get it. I get it. But man, it was rough. It was rough. He was tapping out left, right, and center on some of these lyrics. I went with my wife and she's like, I don't understand a single thing that he has said or sung. And I'm like, yeah, it's getting rough. So I was a little disheartened. I mean, he did shout out, old Georgian Bay where he grew up, and I grew up in Georgian Bay as well, so kind of represent in that case. But yeah, it was rough. It was rough. The other drawback, and this had nothing to do with the actual concert itself, and it's almost like a PSA. Um, Y'all need to stop talking in concerts. Like we were surrounded by talkers throughout the whole show. There were a group of people in front of us, there was a group of people behind us, and the person that sat directly beside me. We're talking throughout the whole show. And when you do like this stare down, I call it the Paddington stare down, just because in the Paddington movies he gives the stare where it's just like you just kind of like, and you just hope that the person realizes that, oh, what I'm doing is actually quite rude and maybe I should stop. I went with my dad, my wife, and myself, and all three of us turned around to look at the people behind us, and I had to stare down the guy beside me because no word of a lie, the guy was Skype calling people throughout the show. Like at first, like he took out his phone, and at first I thought when he was doing this, he was taking video or pictures of the concert. I'm like, that's a respectful way of doing a picture. Because when you're doing a picture like this, like it's bright and it's in everybody's eyes, but when you're doing it like this, you can see it. That's respectful. You're not disturbing people around. And I'm like, wow, this guy's got it. Like I'm finally sitting beside somebody that finally gets it. Until I started hearing him talk, and I realized he wasn't holding his phone like this. He was holding his phone like this so that his microphone was right here, and that I was looking and he had the Skype call of somebody on the other end. What are we doing? Like I was flabbergasted. I was floored, and I started looking, and he kept like looking at me, being like, "What am I doing wrong?" And at one point, I was like, "Guy, you got to hang up the phone. Like I didn't pay $80 to listen to you yammer on for 2.5, 3 hours. Like put down the damn phone so that I can watch this concert that I spent a lot of money to be here for." He also arrived late. Like he came in 3 songs late and he left, luckily, 3 songs early. And so I'm like, blessed be that he finally got the hint and just finally left. But like, I'd never experienced that before. I had never experienced somebody legitimately Skype calling for that long. It wasn't just for a track or two, it was for like half the show. Um, so I just needed to get that off my chest because I was very annoyed and very angry. Um, so yeah, yeah. Overall, before I transition into the positives, I was a little disappointed of the show. And I feel bad because I mean this was the first show with Mike Portnoy back on the drums, and you could feel the energy of the room. You could feel that presence that Portnoy commands. And this is my fifth time seeing the group, and maybe it was the talkers around me, maybe it was LeBray's vocals, but I didn't feel as connected this time around, which is really saying something because like the past full month, I'd been listening to a lot of Dream Theater. Like after listening to Parasomnia, I have been listening to a lot of their back catalog, and this one might have been my least favorite concert of theirs so far. So I've seen them with Black Clouds and Silver Lining the last time Portnoy was touring with them. I saw them when they were touring their self-titled album. I saw them do The Astonishing, and then the previous one, which was the Distance Over Time tour. So those were the 4 times that I saw prior to this, and the fifth time was the one last night. And yeah, it just I don't know, man. We had great seats. They were playing at the Coca-Cola Coliseum, which is one of the mid-tier arenas in Toronto. It's not huge, but it's also not small. The last show I saw there was Ghost, just to kind of give you a comparison. Um, so I don't think it was necessarily the seating or the venue there. Like it almost felt like the vibes were off. And I don't know if that was also just the band felt that, and that's why they weren't quite up to snuff. This is where I will transition into the things that I really did like about the concert. During one of the first tracks, and I will spoil the set list, but I'll tell you beforehand how I'm going to do that. James LeBray holds out the microphone so that the audience, it's the signal to the audience to sing along. This is your time to shine. And I guess when he did that, the microphone fell out and smacked somebody in the first row in the forehead. And it was quite comical because then I guess somebody around him, picked up the microphone and handed it back. But yeah, James LeBray afterwards, a couple songs later, he's like, "Oh man, I beamed the guy in the forehead and now he's got a bandage on his head and I feel really bad about that. But he's not even looking at me, so screw you, man. I'm trying to apologize. I'm trying to make amends and you're not even paying attention to me. Like boo to you." The other thing that I really did enjoy was, LeBray's banter with the audience. I thought that was great. He would come out and be like, "Hey, this is basically my hometown." Growing up in Georgian Bay, we're just basically an hour and a half north of here. Like, this is my hometown. Let's give it up for my hometown. I also loved when they were like, "Yeah, we've been touring, the world, and we just did Europe, and now we're coming over. We did South America, and we're doing now North America, the US." And Mike Portnoy's just like doing the thumbs down when he was saying the US. And now we're doing Canada. And then, of course, Mike Portnoy gives the 2 thumbs up, which was great. And then, of course, LeBray's like, "Yeah, if you count 2 cities as being, we're touring Canada." Because really, they just did Toronto and Montreal. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, he's just like, yeah, you think Canadians are so polite until you beam them in the head with a with a microphone, and now they're all passive aggressive on you. Um, Anyway, that all being said, the presentation and like the light show of the concert was top notch. Like some of the visuals that they had behind them, it reminded me of some of the really trippy things that Mastodon was doing. They never really had like a jumbotron showcasing the musicians. You never really got a close up on Petrucci's finger work on the guitars. You never got a Jordan Rudess on the keyboards or a John Mayung on the bass. It was all like past stuff, which I also really, really appreciated because when they're doing certain songs that they had commissioned, like animations for, you would see the animation in the background, and I'm like, I love seeing that. That's so fun. Um, so yeah, 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 yeah. The other thing that I really, really appreciated was oh, what is it now? I'm trying to think. I had it in my head and I'm like, oh, I need to talk about that. But yeah, now it's gone. So I talked about the animations behind them. Of course, you had the Jordan Rudess keyboard that tilted and whatnot, and both my dad and my wife thought that was amazing. And on the front, when he would like, face the audience, and they had a screen as well, you could see the notes that he was playing because it would like mirror that. Shoot, there was another thing that I was going to mention in my things that I loved before I went into the set list. And of course now, oh, that's it. So during the introduction and then coming back from the intermission, because there was an intermission halfway through, they went through these animations of their album covers. So you would see When Day and Dream Unite, going into Images and Words, going into Awake, falling into Infinity, and blah, 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 blah. During the comeback from the intermission, when it got to The Astonishing, the crowd literally cheered, and it was the only album that received flowers during the album introductions. And I was like, man, I'm so glad to see that The Astonishing is getting some love because, everybody loves Scenes from Memory. Everybody loves Images and Words and Octavarium and, all those. But like to see the only album that got cheers was The Astonishing, it filled my heart with joy because I feel like The Astonishing is a meme album at this point, and it's got some good tracks on it. It's with all of its warts and blemishes, I still love it. So yeah. At this point, I'm going to go into the set list. And if you don't want to be spoiled of the set list, this is where we can part ways. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much. Notes out and all that. But from here on in, I'm just going to spoil the set list and then we can move on. So, set list. I thought it was the best set list that I had seen. They opened up, like they covered quite a bit of ground, and I understand, unlike the 20th anniversary, which they were able to do one track per album. I get that you can't do that when you've got 16 tracks. Like that would take up the entire run of the entire, like, from start to finish, there were 18 tracks, so it is doable, but like, I get it. So, I'm kind of saddened that they didn't do anything from, say, like, obviously they didn't do anything from The Astonishing or When Day and Dream Unite. They did, a smattering of things. So it opened up with Metropolis Part One, The Miracle and the Sleeper, going right into scenes two, Act One, Scene Two with Overture and Strange Deja Vu. Really, really like that. Then they went into The Mirror with an outro of Lie, which I thought was really, really good. Going into Panic Attack, and then they did the one of two tracks from the Mangini era. They did Barstool Warrior, and I believe they also did This Is the Life, which, yeah, I'm glad that they, at least touched upon, played homage to some of those tracks from the Mangini era. I'm kind of sad, once again, that they didn't do more, but still really great. They did a beautiful rendition of Hollow Years. And I'm glad that they stuck to the demo version of that because the demo version I would say is superior to the version that we got on the actual Falling into Infinity aspect. Then we dipped back into Under a Glass Moon, but I'm so glad that they did the Dark Eternal Night, and that was one of the tracks where I was saying how they had the visuals behind them from the actual, you know, um, Systematic Chaos tour. So I really appreciated that they had the animatronic, like not the animatronics, the animated animations behind them because both my wife and my dad got a real kick out of that. After the intermission, we got the double dose from Parasomnia, Night Terror, and Midnight Messiah. Loved both of those. I already mentioned This Is the Life, and then they did a back-to-back train of thought with Vacant and Stream of Consciousness. And the moment that they started Vacant, I was like, "Ah, I know where they're going into. They would be a fool not to finish this with Stream of Consciousness," and it was brilliant, and I practically wept. And then to close off the Act Two, of course, we got Octavarium. I was a little disappointed, honestly, of Octavarium, and mainly because James LeBray did trip over the lyrics a couple of times and actually came in a little too early in the big buildup of that, penultimate piece. And the encore was amazing. We got Act Two from Scene 6 of Home. And I like how they introduced it with Wizard of Oz, being like, "There's no place like home." And the moment I saw that, I'm like, I know exactly what track they're playing. And then the Spirit Carries On. And honestly, this was one of the few times that LeBray actually pulled it out. He did a good job on the Spirit Carries On. That's a hard note to hit. And then ended the show with Pull Me Under. So on paper, perfect set list. I would have moved a few things around though. I probably would have removed Under a Glass Moon only because you already have three tracks from um, Images and Words. And I wouldn't want to remove Pull Me Under or Metropolis. So I would have removed Under a Glass Moon. And I think that would be the only one that I would remove, only to replace it with something from either Six Degrees, because nothing was from Six Degrees, or put on something from Black Clouds and Silver Linings, because that was the other album that they didn't play anything from of the Mike Portnoy era. So, having either, like, I don't think they would do A Nightmare to Remember or The Count of Tuscany. But even doing like the final track from the AA suite, which they've done in the past, um, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily want to hear Wither or Rite of Passage, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the Best of Times would have been a great track to, have in there. Or for 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, pull out, man, could you imagine if they did the Great Debate at this point? But I would have also liked, the Glass Prison or Disappear. I don't think I mean, that last track, obviously they're not going to do the whole thing of, the 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Or even just do like a little bit of a medley of that. Like, I don't know. I don't know. For a 40th anniversary, I would have liked to have at least like a little bit more of the representation of those other albums. But all that being said, I think they still did a great job of at least touching upon all of their big albums. I think that they did a really good job of picking out, also having Octavarium on there. I would have even been okay if they took out Panic Attack just to allow for, heck, could you imagine if they took out Panic Attack and even Dark Eternal Night and did The Misery of Lost Souls? Uh, One of my favorite tracks of all time. Absolutely. Like if they ended Act One with that, mwah, I would have died. Absolutely died. So, all that being said, even with the perfect set list and a great venue, I was still a little bit disappointed, if I'm being perfectly honest. I did wish that, I don't know, maybe the vibes were off that night or something. Like maybe after LeBray beamed the person in the head with the microphone, it, got a little bit better. but where we are now, it was still like a very enjoyable show. Like just because it was my least favorite of the times that I've seen them doesn't mean I didn't have a great time. You know, the musicianship was still top notch. Petrucci is still shredding away like always. Myung is still, I could actually hear him. You know, the bass for the first time in a lot of these tracks, I could actually hear. You know, like that's part of the reason why I wanted to hear more of the Mangini areas, so I could actually hear what the bass was supposed to sound like. Um, yeah, what a night. So yeah, that all being said, it was still a good time, still a good time. And I hope that because they did say, hey, we're coming back in the fall to do a Parasomnia tour, and we're going to play the whole thing from start to finish. And I think Lebre's vocals would fit a lot better so that they don't have to like literally tune down the track just for him to hit a lot of the notes. Honestly, at this point, I'm almost thinking like get a touring backup singer, you know, like don't go full Genesis and get three backup singers, but like maybe hire another guitarist to allow for some of the, you know, dueling guitars that Petrucci has in some of the tracks that can hit some of those notes. Because Portnoy and Petrucci were doing a lot of harmonizing with Lebre to help kind of lift him up in some of those harsher moments. Yeah, so that's where I'm going to leave it. That's where I'm going to leave it. That's my train of thought of the, of the tour. I hope you guys stuck with me. Have you guys seen the tours? What were your experiences like? What city did you see them in? Was my set list the same as your set list? Yeah, let me know all about that by commenting down below. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.